So yeah, the title of this video is not clickbait. I don't understand communism. Now, this is going to be like a very, very structured sort of YouTube video that maybe some of you who might be watching this are used to. Like, it's not going to be one of those mood videos with like smooth flow or anything like that. This is just going to be me talking about like how I'm a college student who does not understand communism, and how almost every class that I'm taking, I just see a lot of people who are communists, who straight up admit that they're communists, and no matter how much time I spend talking to them, I just don't understand why this specific ideology is like so attractive in my university, and maybe just not my university, just generally in the West. So yeah, I guess I should start off by saying, like, giving some background to this whole like chat rant discussion. I don't know. So I'm from Eastern Europe. I'm 23, well, technically 24, soon to be, and I go to like an American style university. And we have people from like all across the world. Like, we have people from Kazakhstan, from Ukraine, from Russia, Georgia, we have a few German people, a couple of Americans, obviously. Like, it's a multicultural sort of environment, basically. And the first 2 years when I studied, right, there was like no political discussion on my campus. There was just like nothing like that. People were just, chilling, talking about movies, TV shows, books, video games, that sort of stuff. Obviously, we also discussed like class material stuff if we had to. But this year, I basically took some of the classes that were not part of my core curriculum. And I realized like just how many people, I didn't realize this before, but after taking like non-core curriculum classes, I realized how many people in my university were really like left-wing, like hardcore left-wing. And mind you, I don't really have a good understanding of politics and like the political spectrum. I have like a vague, nuanced, kind of intuitive understanding of what like the left from the right distinguishes itself by. So yeah, and now that I'm taking like classes with like people from communications major, I'm like realizing just how non-fringe like the whole political discussion actually is. Like, it's so steeped in like everyday communication classes. Almost like literally almost any topic necessarily brings up like the discussion on politics. And mind you, maybe that's just because of like, the people and their background. Like I mentioned before, that we have quite a number of people from Eastern Europe, like myself. And obviously with the whole Russian invasion, and then like the Ukrainian oppression, Belarusian oppression, like last 2 years, I think, ago, I can kind of understand why there might be like a big political discussion happening. But like, it was never on like this like level before. And like, I guess the wars, and I am meaning wars plural because it's not just Ukraine. There's like things that happen with Azerbaijan and things that are happening in Palestine right now, which I'm not going to talk about. And the whole point of it is like, of this whole rant, not to like derail the conversation entirely. The monologue, really, not the conversation. The point really is of this conversation just to like talk how I don't understand communism and why so many people, especially from Eastern Europe, like where I'm from, are attracted to it. Like, I'll give you an example. I know a guy from Georgia He's an outright communist. He like admitted it himself. He's like a non-apologetic communist. And like we were talking about it and like what the Soviets basically did to like Georgia and like most of the other Eastern European countries, like the oppression, the famines, the whole, the general like knowledge stuff. And like he was just like, I was like, oh, that wasn't like real communism. That was like total authoritarianism or something like that. I was like, what? It was like, yeah, okay, but what brought about that authoritarianism is like the communistic ideals. No? He was like, no, you don't understand. He was like, okay, no, fair enough, like maybe I don't. Like I really probably don't, because like I don't know anything about communism. Like my understanding of it is basically that it's like an ideology steeped in historical materialism, founded by Marx and Engels, and that the way they look at the world is through a lens of the oppressive class, which is like the bourgeoisie, I think, and the oppressed class, which is the proletariat. And like really the main point, I guess, about this whole like video is I don't really have a person, like despite how many communists I met, like not a single person has explained to me the whole idea of communism in such a way that I can understand it like logically. And like I myself, like I'll admit it, I like looked at the text and like not just looked, like actually read the text. Like I started with Engels and like the principles of communism, and like very early on, like he distinguishes like what the proletariat is, how it's separate from like the slave class, the whole of like the other things, like what was it, serfs, slaves, something else I don't remember. And then he goes talk about like property and how like the means of production and all of it were taken away with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, how I think he called spindlers, basically things that you use to produce your own goods, right? They were like monopolized and sort of taken by the bourgeoisie and made it in such a way so that they outproduced or outcompeted the individual local people's means of production. I'm not explaining it very well because like I don't really understand it, but basically it, like the Industrial Revolution and capitalism in general, created a system and also the means to outcompete local, national people's production. I don't know how to call it. I don't remember the terminology, but it got to a point where the same spindler just could not compete in the market because his means of production, he could only produce one item at a time, whereas capitalism and to a certain degree the bourgeoisie, their factories just could produce the same thing in far greater quantity and quality than the individual like spindler. That's how I understood it, and then like later he talks about like all the other stuff, but like I'm not gonna summarize like the whole thing, but basically I read the principles, right? I thought, okay, I think I understand it. Then I went to Antonio Gramsci and like his understanding of hegemony or like cultural hegemony, and like I guess really the main point really here is like I did my own research, like I read the original source materials, but I don't really have a person who can explain like the whole communist idea in such a way that it like logically works together. And this is probably going to be another different video for this, but like the communists, like themselves, like the people who actually believe it in my university, they just come off so unlikable. Like when you ask them like to explain the idea, they explain it to you from like a position of like arrogance, and it's like very hard to actually like take what they say and like actually analyze it and all, because it's like they're talking down to you when they try to explain it to you. And I know what like some of the comments might say is like, just go to Wikipedia, like look up the like standard definition of like communism, and like there you go, now you understand it. But it's like, it's not so simple. It's like, yeah, like you can have like a 1 to 2 sentence definition, but it's like it doesn't encapsulate the whole idea. Like 1-2 sentences is not going to capture the whole like history, like the historical contribution to this idea. And you know, the thing else about it is like when you go to Wikipedia, like I looked at what communism means, you know, like those like simple sites. There's, I think, also like a Marxist website specifically, but from what I looked, they only have like the authors who contributed to communism, or like, you guys might know what I'm talking about. I don't know, like if anybody watches this video, you know what I'm talking about. There's like a website, there's these various names, and then there's like publications of the people's works under those names. It's like, but I didn't see any like definition of communism there. And like, anyways, that's basically what I have to say. Like, I don't understand it. It doesn't cohere to me. Maybe it's just because the way Marx explained it, it's very simple, but also not simple for me for some reason. And if you watch this video, or anybody who actually understands communism watches this video, how did you actually learn about the subject? Like, where did you start? Did you actually start with Marx and Engels, and like then went to Gramsci and I don't know who the other communist authors are? Or did you just like watch some sort of video? Like, is there an actual video? Because I couldn't find a video like on the history of communism. Oh, one last thing. The reason why I want to understand the whole idea and not just like have a vague general understanding of it, but an actual in-depth understanding of it, is because from what I notice on campus, the political discussion is so heated and very, very, very like, how do you say it? Very us versus them type of mentality. I feel like having a good, or at least decent understanding of politics in this time period, because, well, quite frankly, things aren't looking too good. Not from a political perspective, not from an economic perspective, and certainly not from a social perspective. Because like, even as a European, like my society is very much like unified, very traditional, patriarchal, you can say, I guess. But like in the US or in Western Europe more, it's very divided. And I guess knowing or understanding politics now is probably more important than ever before. And yeah, I mean, I am a psychology major, so really this is kind of an area outside of my expertise, but I generally feel like it's gonna become important to be at least to some degree knowledgeable about politics, because clearly, and I don't think you have to be a communist to like make this observation, but clearly whoever is like running the system, and not just like, you know, the American system, but generally the global system, like clearly they're like not doing something right. Because like nowadays, even in Europe, you can't really afford to live off the minimum wage. But yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. maybe I'll make a separate video about how life is difficult even in Eastern Europe, and how like most people are leaving it. So, but yeah, anyways, if anybody ends up listening to this, thank you, and yeah, see ya.